For most people who have gone through the long and often exhausting process of becoming a United States citizen, the word citizenship carries a sense of finality. It means the journey is over, the paperwork is done, and the status is permanent. You take an oath, receive a certificate, and are told that you now belong. That belief is deeply ingrained, and it is exactly why the idea that new U.S. laws could force thousands of people to reapply for citizenship feels so shocking. It sounds impossible, even unthinkable, and yet the systems that govern immigration and nationality are quietly shifting in ways that make this scenario far more plausible than most people realize. The modern citizenship system is no longer built around paper files locked in cabinets. It is built around digital records, biometric databases, and interagency data sharing. When you became a citizen, your information was entered into a network of systems that include the Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the State Department, the Social Security Administration, and several law enforcement databases. Each of these systems has its own rules, formats, and update schedules. For years, they operated mostly in parallel. Now they are being synchronized. That synchronization is being driven by a wave of new laws, regulations, and internal policies designed to identify inconsistencies, fraud, and security risks. On paper, these changes are described as administrative improvements. In practice, they are creating a situation where citizenship is no longer treated as a static status, but as something that must continuously match what the government's data systems say about you. When those systems disagree, your status can be questioned. This is where the idea of being forced to reapply enters the picture. The law does not usually say that your citizenship is automatically revoked because of a data mismatch. Instead, it allows agencies to reopen, review, or challenge a prior decision if new information suggests that something was wrong or incomplete. In the past, this was rare and required significant human review. Under the new data-driven framework, it can be triggered by an algorithm. Imagine a simple example. Your naturalization record shows one version of your name. Your passport shows another. Your Social Security file shows a third. Your immigration history, stored in a legacy system, might still reflect a spelling or date that was corrected years ago. When these systems are compared, the computer does not know which one is right. It only knows that they do not match. In a security-focused environment, a mismatch is treated as a red flag. Multiply that by millions of people who have changed their names, moved, married, divorced, or corrected errors over decades, and you begin to see the scale of the problem. What used to be normal human life events now look like data anomalies, and data anomalies trigger reviews. The new laws do not say in plain language that thousands of citizens must reapply. What they do is expand the government's authority to review and verify past immigration and naturalization decisions when certain conditions are met. They also expand data sharing between agencies, which means more conditions are being met more often. A tax filing, a travel record, or an update to an immigration database can all create a new comparison point. If that comparison produces a discrepancy, it can initiate a case. Once a case is opened, the burden often shifts to the individual. You may be asked to provide documents that prove how and when you became a citizen, that your application was accurate, and that nothing material has changed. For someone who naturalized 20 or 30 years ago, finding those documents can be extremely difficult. Records may have been lost, offices closed, or files archived. Yet the system expects proof, and until that proof is provided, your status can remain in question. This is not about mass deportations or dramatic raids. It is about quiet administrative processes that operate through letters, online portals, and deadlines. If you miss a notice, misunderstand a request, or fail to respond in time, the system may proceed without you. That can lead to a suspension of your passport, a hold on your Social Security record, or other restrictions that effectively force you to prove who you are all over again. What makes this particularly unsettling is that it does not only affect recent immigrants. Some of the people most at risk are longtime citizens who went through older, paper-based processes. Their records are more likely to be incomplete or inconsistent because they were never designed for today's digital environment. When those old records are pulled into new systems, errors appear that were never visible before. There is also a political and financial dimension to this shift. Immigration enforcement and citizenship verification have become major priorities, and agencies are under pressure to show results. Data-driven reviews produce measurable outcomes. They generate cases, investigations, and actions that can be counted. That creates an incentive to widen the net. For the individual caught in that net, the experience can be frightening and destabilizing. Citizenship is tied to your ability to work, travel, vote, and receive benefits. When it is questioned, even temporarily, every part of your life can be affected. The idea that you might have to reapply for something you already earned feels like a betrayal, but from the system's point of view, it is simply a verification step. In the next section, we will look more closely at who is most likely to be targeted by these new reviews and why certain groups of citizens face a much higher risk of being pulled back into the process. Not everyone who became a U.S. citizen is equally exposed to these new review mechanisms. The system is designed to prioritize cases based on what it considers risk, and that risk is defined by patterns in the data rather than by personal history or fairness. As a result, certain groups are far more likely to find themselves under scrutiny, even if they have lived quietly and lawfully in the United States for decades. One of the largest groups affected is people who naturalized after first entering the country through complex immigration pathways. This includes asylum seekers, refugees, people who adjusted their status from temporary visas, and those who had previous applications denied before eventually being approved. Each step in that journey creates a record, and those records do not always align perfectly. When modern systems compare old visa applications, asylum claims, green card files, and naturalization records, even small differences can be interpreted as inconsistencies. Another high-risk group is people who change their names. Marriage, divorce, cultural adjustments, and personal preference all lead to name changes, and many immigrants have more than one version of their name used across different documents. Some systems still store original names, others store updated ones, and some store both. When these records are compared, the software may not recognize that they belong to the same person. That triggers a review. People who were born in countries with less standardized record-keeping are also more vulnerable. Birth dates, birthplaces, and even parent names may have been recorded differently on different documents. When those details do not line up across U.S. databases, the system sees uncertainty. In a security-focused environment, uncertainty is treated as a potential problem. Dual citizens and people who travel frequently are another group that faces increased attention. Border crossing records, passport use, and foreign residency data are now being shared more widely between agencies. If you hold another passport, live abroad for part of the year, or have strong ties to another country, the system may flag your account for additional verification. That does not mean dual citizenship is illegal. It means the system wants to be sure that your U.S. status was granted correctly and still applies. Older citizens who naturalized many years ago face a different kind of risk. Their applications were often processed under older rules and recorded on paper. When those records are digitized, errors can be introduced. A handwritten note might be misread. A document might be missing. A file might be incomplete. The computer does not know that this is a historical artifact. It only knows that the digital record is not perfect. There is also a financial angle. People who receive government benefits, have Social Security numbers, file taxes, or apply for federal programs generate more data. The more data you generate, the more opportunities there are for mismatches. A tax return that lists a different birth date format than an immigration file, or a Social Security record that uses a different spelling of a name, can be enough to raise questions. What all of these groups have in common is not wrongdoing, but complexity. The system is optimized for simplicity. A person who was born in the United States, never changed their name, never left the country, and has a single continuous record is easy for the database to understand. A person who immigrated, adjusted status, changed names, traveled, and lived a full life is much harder to model. The system treats that difficulty as risk. Once a person is flagged as higher risk, their file is more likely to be reviewed, and once it is reviewed, it can be reopened. That is how someone who has been a citizen for decades can suddenly receive a letter asking for proof of how they became one. The emotional impact of this cannot be overstated. Citizenship is deeply tied to identity and belonging. Being told that it is under review can feel like being told that you do not truly belong. It creates fear, anger, and uncertainty, all of which are amplified when the process is driven by faceless systems rather than human judgment. Yet from the government's perspective, this is simply a way to ensure the integrity of the system. That tension between human experience and bureaucratic logic is at the heart of what is happening. In the final section, we will look at what individuals can do to protect themselves and how to respond if they are asked to prove their citizenship again. The possibility of being asked to prove your citizenship again can feel overwhelming, but there are practical steps you can take to reduce the risk and to respond effectively if it happens. The key is to understand that this new environment is driven by data, and the more complete and consistent your data is, the safer you are. Start by gathering and organizing every document related to your immigration and naturalization history. This includes your original visa or entry documents, green card, naturalization certificate, passport, and any name change or court records. Make digital copies and store them securely. Many people assume they will never need these again, but in a system that reopens old cases, having proof at your fingertips is critical. Next, check how your information appears across different government systems. Your Social Security record, passport, and immigration file should all reflect the same name, date of birth, and status. If you see discrepancies, take steps to correct them now. It is much easier to fix a record proactively than to do so while your status is under review. If you receive a notice asking for information, do not ignore it and do not delay. Deadlines are strict, and automated systems do not grant extensions easily. Read the request carefully, provide exactly what is asked for, and keep proof that you submitted it. Sending documents by a trackable method and keeping copies can protect you if there is a dispute later. It is also wise to seek professional help if a case becomes complicated. Immigration attorneys and accredited representatives understand how these systems work and how to present information in a way that satisfies the requirements. While there may be a cost, the stakes are high enough that expert guidance is often worth it. Perhaps most importantly, stay informed. Laws and policies continue to change, and new data sharing agreements can expand the scope of these reviews. Knowing what is happening allows you to act before a problem becomes a crisis. Citizenship is still one of the strongest legal protections you can have, but in a digital age, it is only as secure as the records that support it. By making sure those records are accurate, complete, and consistent, you put yourself in the best possible position to weather whatever changes come next. For many people, the idea that they might have to reapply for citizenship feels like a betrayal of everything they worked for. Yet the reality is that what is really being demanded is proof. Proof that the system, with all its flaws and inconsistencies, can accept. Preparing that proof now is the smartest way to protect your future. As these new laws and technologies reshape how citizenship is verified, some people will be caught off guard. Others will be ready. The difference will not be luck, but preparation. Making sure that your story is documented, your records are aligned, and your responses are timely can make all the difference when the system comes knocking.